Hare There's one melody that we used to sing for Hare Krishna, and it just came to my mind on the way here. So don't mind, but I want to do this for 1 minute so I remember, so we can. It's kind of fun. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Kunjavi Hari ki jai. Grantaraja Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to thee. All glories to thee. All glories to thee. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Goranga. Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Itina Namaste Saraswate Gauravani Vachayane Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shashaye Vancha Kalpataru Yasha Kripa Sindhu Yayasha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Radha-kanta Namostute Tapta-ganchana-dorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwamanusute-devi Pranamami Haripriye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottama Deving Saraswati Vyasa Tato Jayamudiraye Nashta Prayesha Vavadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Today I thought we can read from Canto 7, a verse from Prahlad Maharaj, who's addressing Nrsimhadev. This is in the chapter, the final chapter of the pastime of the appearance of Nrsimhadev, in which the Lord wants to offer some benediction to Prahlad. And in this verse Prahlad expresses what is his desire. His desire is to have no desire, no material desire. Yada dāsyasi me kāmān Yadi dāsyasi me kāmān varāṁs tvam varadarṣabha varāṁs tvam varadarṣabha kāmānāṁ hṛdy asaṁrohaṁ kāmānāṁ hṛdy asaṁrohaṁ bhavatas tu vṛṇe varam bhavatas tu vṛṇe varam yadi dāsyasi me kāmān varāns tvam varadarṣabha kāmānāṁ hṛdy asaṁrohaṁ bhavatas tu vṛṇe varam yadi dāsyasi me kāmān varāṁs tvam varadarṣabha kāmānāṁ bhavatas tu vṛṇe varam
asaṁrohaṁ bhavatastu hṛde varam
Ladies.
Yadi dāsyasi me kāmān, varāṁs tvam varada-ṛṣabha, kāmānāṁ asaṁrohaṁ, bhavatastu hṛde varam.
Yadi dāsyasi me kāmān, varāṁs tvam varada-ṛṣabha, kāmānāṁ hṛdi asaṁrohaṁ, bhavatastu hṛde varam.
Right, so what does this mean? Yadi, if. Do we have the translation system here working? Everyone can hear the means. Dāsyasi, want to give. Me, kāmān, anything desirable. Varān, as your benediction. Tvam, you. Varada-ṛṣabha, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can give any benediction. Kāmānāṁ, of all desires for material happiness. hṛdi, what's happening? Huh? Yeah. You can't tell because you have it in front of you. Then it's no fun. Okay. Within the core of my heart, asaṁrohaṁ, no growth. Bhavatāḥ, from you. To then. vṛṇe, I pray for. Varam, such a benediction. Translation word word by His Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. O my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if you at all want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray for your Lordship. I pray from your Lordship that within the core of my heart there be no material desires. It's interesting, Prabhupada's translation for hṛdi is within the core of the heart. Literally it's just in the heart, but he makes this point. And then in the translation also, let there be no material desires within the core of my heart. Something to think about. You might say, well, but isn't it that the core of the heart is where there are no material desires? That's where Krishna resides. That's the core of the heart. It's something other than the core of the heart, in which it's maybe the surface of the heart where these material desires appear. Okay, purport. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us how to pray for benedictions from the Lord. He said, Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamare mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatān bhaktirahaitu kitvari. O my Lord, I do not want from you any amount of wealth, nor many followers, nor a beautiful wife, for these are all materialistic desires. But if I have to ask you for any benediction, I pray that in whatever forms of life I may take my birth, under any circumstances, I will not be bereft of your transcendental devotional service. You all know this word bereft. It means without. Yes, whatever you said. Devotees are always on the positive platform, in contrast to the Mayavadis, who want to make everything impersonal or void. One cannot remain void, shunyavadi. Rather, one must possess something. Therefore, the devotee on the positive side wants to possess something, and this possession is very nicely described by Prahlad Maharaj, who says, if I must take some benediction from you, I pray that within the core of my heart there may be no material desires. The desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not at all material. This is good news. Do we have some desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead? No?
Yes.
How much? How much desire? Very little. How to measure, right? How to measure? Well, I have this much. Well, I have this much. I have this much. Just see how much desire I have. That could, of course, be a way of displaying pride, which would not be conducive to devotional service. Okay. Prahlad Maharaj has already offered many prayers in the previous chapter to Nrsingadev, and Nrsingadev very much appreciated his prayers. And one of the prayers that he offers, which is well known, Naibod Vijay Paraduratyari Yas Tadvirya Gaya Mahamrita Magna Chitta Shoche Tato Vimata Chetas Indriyarda Maya Sikaya Varam Udvahato Vimudham. He has prayed that as far as I'm concerned, I have no needs, no problems, no worries. Na eva udvijay para duratyaya vaitaranyas. I've already crossed beyond the Vaitarani river. I've already arrived. He's declaring, I've already arrived. Shoche, but I'm concerned. Vimukha cetasa, for those who have turned their face, literally, whose consciousness has turned away from the Lord. maya sukha, and therefore, and what are they doing with their turned away attention? They're experiencing some happiness. But what sort of happiness? Maya sukha, illusory, temporary, a semblance. It is a semblance of happiness. It is not the real thing. Something which characterizes us as devotees, as aspiring devotees, is we want the real thing. We want authentic happiness. We want the substance. We don't want the shadow. And because this is clear to us, it becomes possible for us to turn toward Krishna, to turn our face toward Krishna, who we recognize as varada-ṛṣabha. There's a deity of Krishna, Vishnu, Narayana in South India, in Kanchipura, known as varada-ṛṣabha, the king of those who give benedictions. He's famous. Everyone goes to Varada-ṛṣabha with their prayers. Give me, give me, give me, give me, give me. Everyone is wishing to receive from the Lord. Where does this desire, this kāmān, come from? Where does it come from? We might reflect on this for a moment. And we could start from our position as devotees. We could reflect first of all on the things that we have. Kāma is generally associated with what one does not have. One thinks one should have, but doesn't. Something one is lacking. So as devotees, it's nice, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, it's nice to, he doesn't say to think positively, he says rather, devotees are always on the positive platform. You're already there. You're on the positive platform. Congratulations. And on the positive platform, what do we do? Well, one thing we do is we recognize, we appreciate all the blessings that we already have from the Lord. Can we think of some blessings that we have? Association of devotees. We have the holy names of the Lord, yes. We have Srila Prabhupada's books. We have prasadam. Yes,
we can think of and remember Krishna.
We can think of and remember Krishna. Okay, good. We have a process of worshipping Krishna through the deities. Okay? So that means Krishna is not in the deity, we're only worshipping through the deity. I'm just a little bit, devil's advocate. Working on that.
We have a human body.
We have a human body. Oh, we have human bodies. Another one. We live in fairly civilized countries. Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Even if Mahatma Gandhi, when he was asked, when he came to England, what do you think of Western civilization? You know what he answered? Said, I think that would be a very good idea. Get it? Yeah. And then we might also appreciate more specific things each of us individually have. We might be thankful for particular abilities that we have. We may be thankful for, we may be grateful and appreciative that at the present time we have more or less healthy condition. Some of us more, some of us less, and for all of us the clock is ticking, so the health is there for a limited time for all of us. Other things that we may have. Anyone want to share something you are grateful for? Yes?
I am grateful that Krishna gave me this particular spiritual path, that I'm not in Christianity to watch God on the cross something all the time.
Okay.
Or having no picture. This is such a happy spiritual path. You need to dance.
It's a happy spiritual path. Thank you. Your good name? What is your name? She's too shy.
Sorry,
Amrita Keli Mataji is grateful for having this path, this spiritual path, and not some other path. This spiritual path is a very joyful path. Nice. Anything else? Yes. Yes? You?
I'm grateful that Krishna is a person as he is, so joyful and similar to what Dr. said, like a humorous and jolly person, and that we can stand the rest of like turning into such a person, and so
Okay, I don't know how to repeat all of that for everyone to hear, but basically you're grateful for being situated where you are and having the abilities, talents, and sensibility that you have. Something like that. How is that? Something. Okay. Yes, Mark.
I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to connect with Krishna and his devotees through Prabhupada and our success.
Okay, Maharaj is grateful for... Can you repeat it louder? My brain is not yet working.
I'm grateful that I have an opportunity to associate with Krishna through our disciplic succession coming from the devotees and through Prabhupada.
Jai, thank you.
I'm personally grateful that somehow I can always see auspiciousness everywhere, the positive side. I think it is genetically inherited from my mother. It's not, it's just somehow a willingness and an ability to see auspiciousness everywhere, chances. It's great that I notice some are not able to see more negatively organized brains, but
You're on the positive platform. Genetically, you're on the positive Yes.
I'm grateful to be here with all of you. Very nice to work with you.
Jai, thank you. Yes.
I'm very grateful that Krishna sent me my spiritual master, who always sees even me in the positive things.
Even me!
And saved me so many times.
Nice.
So,
Okay. So yeah, we have so much to be grateful for. This reminds me of a couple of things. One is there's a list of the of characteristics of being in a state of bhava. Shantir avyartakalatam nirashi manashunyata ashabanda samutkanta namagane sada ruchi, and then it goes on from there. But ashabanda, which Prabhupada translates as hope against hope. Literally, it's bound by hope. So we are bound by hope to that extent that we can see possibility for advancement in Krishna consciousness. To that extent that we can see that we are already connected with Krishna to some extent. To that extent that we can recognize and acknowledge, I have a desire to be Krishna conscious. And to that extent that we see possibility to expand that desire, to fill our hearts and to penetrate all the way to the very core. It also reminds me of a nice verse I'm sure you're familiar with in Bhagavad Gita, almost the end of chapter 2. A nice analogy is given. Apuryamana achala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yapat tapat kāmāyam pravishanti sarve sa shantim apnoti na kama kami. The example is of rivers flowing into an ocean. Rivers have a way of constantly flowing. And oceans have a way of being oceans. With occasional exceptions called tsunamis, due to conditions especially reserved for the age of Kali. Oceans basically stay where they are and do what they do, which is to give shelter to all the denizens of the oceans and so on. And the rivers do what they do. They flow into the ocean. Is the ocean disturbed by the rivers? No. So similarly, this is the example Krishna is giving. Similarly, so many desires may be coming, but the devotee identifying with the ocean of the nectar of devotion. Even if we may not be diving and and swimming in that ocean, even if we may feel like we're standing on the edge of the ocean, we're looking, but we identify with that ocean. How to identify with that ocean? That is our hope. And that is our intention, that is our choice in Krishna consciousness. And that gives us, that constitutes our authenticity. Someone asked me I should ask before I go rambling on, what's our schedule? When should I? And at 9 o'clock.
Sometimes people
they just
swim into the ocean.
Yeah, they just go on and on and on. And everyone goes, yeah, okay. No, we won't do it. Okay. Someone asked me recently, a few days ago, I was in Lisbon, Portugal. I was giving a course, a summer course at one university there, on Indian culture. Indian culture. Well, the way I narrowed it down was Indian culture through biographies. And so I was presenting different individuals and their stories. I started with Lord Buddha. Why you didn't start with Krishna? I started with Buddha because the accounts of Buddha's life that we have are older than the accounts we have of Krishna's life. Huh? Okay, that's another subject. But anyway, I started with Buddha. Then we discussed Krishna, the life of Krishna. Then we discussed a devotee of Krishna. Guess who? Eventually, but Lord Chaitanya. Yes. And then we moved forward in time, and then I discussed Mahatma Gandhi. Oh, the devotees groan. Why you have to talk about him? I talked about him because several reasons, but one reason is that Srila Prabhupada spoke about him. And immediately after talking about Gandhi, I spoke about Srila Prabhupada. And so I could speak about what Prabhupada said about Gandhi. These are some of the tricks of the trade of preaching. Anyway, one lady, one of the students, she asked a very interesting question, I thought, about Gandhi. As you may know, Gandhi had, well, maybe you don't know, he had two sort of central principles in his life. One was ahimsa, non-violence. The other was satyagraha, grasping, holding on to the truth. So this lady was asking, was it truth that Gandhi was concerned about? Or was it authenticity? What's the word for authenticity? Autentičnost. Autentičnost. That sounds like a borrowed word. It had to be borrowed because prior to this there was no, I'm sorry. So I said no, he was actually interested in truth, not only authenticity, though certainly authenticity was important to him also. Well, more recently I came across a discussion about truth, which I thought is interesting, and I want to share with you as something to think about. Because this comes back to this point of hopefulness related to authenticity, related to what is in the core of our heart, and related to desire. And this is as follows. Yudhishthira Maharaj asks Bhishma in the Mahabharata to explain to him what is truth. And Bhishma gives a very interesting answer. First, he speaks about truth in relation to the varna system. But he says truth is a value which is intrinsic, and therefore it is above the various duties within the varna system. Truth is something intrinsically valuable. Intrinsic. Born within, we have another. Little louder.
It's sebi svojstveno,
Okay.
svojstvo porođenja.
Okay. Yeah. So it is a value in and of itself. Intrinsically, it is valuable. You don't have to justify it by something else. Now, we always hear that Krishna is the absolute truth, right? And everything else is relative truths. Now, we may wonder, how do we get from relative truth to absolute truth? But one answer is, we don't. We make a leap. Yesterday, Satyananda Maharaj spoke about the categorical leap. So this may be one understanding. Sometimes, though, this may be misunderstood, and we may think, yes, we're into the absolute truth, so relative truths don't really matter to us, and therefore, I can lie. Therefore, I cannot keep promises. Therefore, these are all relative values. We don't have to take them so seriously. But Bhishmadev, in his answer to Yudhishthira Maharaj, he gives a list of qualities which are supportive of truth as this intrinsic value. And I won't go into this list of the qualities that are there, but what struck me is that some of them are mentioned or suggested by the verse after this verse 7. Indriyani mana prana atma dharmo dhritirmati hri shri teja smriti satyam yasya nashyanti janmana. Translation, O my Lord, because of lusty desires from the very beginning of one's birth, the functions of one's senses, mind, life, body, religion, patience, intelligence, shyness, opulence, strength, memory, and truthfulness are vanquished. So all these different qualities are destroyed by kāma. And therefore, Prahlāda Maharaj is saying, if you want to benedict me, allow me to let them not grow. Literally, the Sanskrit is let it asaṁrohaṁ, let these desires not be growing in my heart. Okay, a further point about truth. There's different virtues which maintain truth. 3 of them have been suggested. One is sincerity. Sincerity has to do with, as Kshetra Swami used to say, it comes from the word sincera, the Italian, without wax, meaning marble, which is solid. So a solidness of being, that we walk our talk and we talk our walk, and thus we become trustworthy, and thus we become able to trust others. Another virtue of truth is accuracy. And it struck me this morning that Srila Prabhupada often speaks of how Krishna consciousness is scientific. I always wondered what he means by that, scientific. Today's scientists will look at our tradition and sort of shake their heads. How is this scientific? We don't perform the sorts of experiments that would normally be understood as scientific. But one value in science is accuracy of information. So this is a value which is conducive to this intrinsic value, which is truth. There's one more value, and that is receptivity. Being receptive to the truth. Now, in a broad sense, this is what we're all about as we're chanting Hare Krishna. We are praying to Krishna, but we're also being receptive to the name which is Krishna, which is the Absolute, who is the Absolute Truth. But what is receptivity? It is a disposition to allow truth or truths. There may be specific truths, also relative truths. Their full weight in our lives, in our minds, and thus to act consequentially on the basis of those truths. So it's not just a matter of, oh yeah, that's true, so what else is new? But, oh, that's true. What is true? I am a practicing devotee of Krishna. Consequence of that is I pursue the path of devotion service. And this path is a long path. It's a very long path. And sometimes we look ahead and we think, oh, it is too long. But how do you get from where you are to your destination when you are walking along the path? How do you do it?
One step at a time.
Yes, that could be a mantra. Everybody together now. One step at a time. Yes, very good. So that's something to remember from this morning's lecture. One step at a time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh yes, but we do get distracted and we may wonder, is it really the right path? Is the end destiny of this path where I want to be? I'm reminded of a story, a true story. You want a true story? This is accurate, true. Told by my god sister, Mother Rukmini, about a time many years ago in Boston, before they had their deities, Shri Radha Gopi Vallabha. They now have very beautiful Shri Radha Gopi Vallabha, who are, by the way, one set of deities. There are three of the same mold. Shri Radha Vallabha in Boston, Shri Radha Madhava, the smaller deities in Mayapur, and I'm forgetting the name. You will know of the deities in Berkeley. Berkeley? No? Mother Urmila? Berkeley? Okay. Berkeley, California. We can look it up on the internet. Okay. Anyway, Shri Radha Vallabha had arrived at customs in Boston. And the customs officials contacted the temple. Mother Rukmini and others, they came to the customs office, and the customs officers asked them, so, what is the value of this shipment? And Mother Rukmini answered, oh, for us, they are invaluable. You can't measure the value. They are priceless. She shouldn't have said that. Because then they kept Shri Radha Gopi Vallabha for quite some time longer in custody. while they considered what to charge for import. So let us also remember, Krishna is priceless. Nowadays, in these days of consumerism, everything has a price. Everyone has a price. That's the mentality of the materialist. Everything, everyone has a price. We simply find out the price and we pay it. So let us remember Krishna consciousness on the path, one step at a time, and Krishna is priceless. Hare Krishna. We still have, by my watch, 7 minutes. If there's some comment or question. Mother?
Prabhupada talks about an elevator instead of stairs. He talks about an elevator.
All right.
Sorry.
All right. One floor at a time.
You know, there's some of those elevators that are express elevators.
Express elevators. She's not giving up. All right. Help me out.
One elevator.
I'm learning from you how to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, I know. It's reaction coming. Yes, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your class. Please permit me, I understand you have a very scholarly Vaishnava before you, so I'd like to drill a little bit deeper and see what else is there in the information.
He's a miner. He's digging for jewels.
I think it was very, very valuable how you suggested we deal with material desires. Or we all know on the spiritual path, this is a, let me say, area we need to pay attention to. You said instead of coming from that position of wanting something else, that is the psychology of desire. You don't have something now, so you project your minds in the future and dream by fulfilling this or getting this item, which is, or whatever in the future, you will be covering the lack inside. So you suggested, no, let's not think like this. We can battle material desires or stop this let me say, projection to the future by just saying, look what we have now, what we can be grateful for. Could you maybe argue your case, how this stops material desires? Because I think Arjuna, please help me with the verse, he says something like the intelligence knows, but in English, he is forced against his better will, or what was the English of that?
What is the force, well, more or less paraphrase, what is the force that is impelling you even against my will?
Yeah.
It said you should do your duty, or counting, but I'd like to do my duty, but what's the force that's
Something's forcing me against my will.
Yeah, against my will. So I very much appreciate your point. I don't, there's great value in it, and we know by focusing on one thing, this will bring more. Like if I enter into gratitude, yes, I will discover so many things that might fill out the inner void which causes the desire. But is that enough? Because there is also this, it's acting from again, it's a force which is there. I wanted to just ask.
The Prabhupada said so many times, it is a gradual process. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is, in addition to the work that we do in addressing material desire, or as intrinsic, let's say, to addressing material desire, needs to be a recognition of what it is we already have. And of course, Krishna is saying, "Vyasena tu kaunteya, vairāgyena tu hṛdy." We have to practice, and so on. And this, in effect, is answering also Arjuna's concern. The problem is kāma. Kāma esha, krodha esha, rajaguna samudho. Kāma arises. Okay, how does it arise? Kāma, krodha, they arise. And then, throughout the Gita, Krishna is explaining how to deal with kāma. And essentially, he's saying it's about practice. Practice has two aspects. One is repetition. You're practicing mridanga, you have to repeat. You have to keep repeating, practicing. And it's also, or by that, it's cumulative. And it's also allowing yourself to make mistakes. When you're learning an instrument, you make mistakes, and then you correct. But also intrinsic to the process is vairāgya, renunciation, giving up, letting go, practicing a little bit at a time. Could I let this go? Could this resentment that I feel for this person, could I maybe let this go?
Just to say something more about that. The verse that Satyananda Maharaj quoted, Krishna says, if Arjuna is actually asking, what is impelling me by force to act sinfully, even against my duty, which Krishna had explained in the previous verse. And in the verse that you quoted, the new translation, from the BVP, is suitable practice and detachment, which fits into, Arjuna was saying that even if I know, what my duty is, my suitable duty, and I practice it, what happens if I become attached to something that's not my duty, and I start practicing that? Krishna says, nidana, you become destroyed. And what is that destruction? That's considered papa. That's considered to be sinful. Not to do your own duty, but to do someone else's duty.
Thank you, that's a nice clarification. So thinking in terms of duty, I'm getting a bit worried. This is becoming a more and more interesting discussion. I can almost feel Muni's breath breathing behind my neck, even though it's not there. We're okay? Well, yes. Yes.
Thank you very much for a very nice and inspiring lecture. You mentioned absolute truth and relative truth also. I would like to ask then how can we distinguish absolute from a relative truth, not just in a theoretical but in a practical way also, and how to live accordingly.
Oh, that's a big question. It's a whole lecture in itself. In brief, I would say through service. That's how we do it. It's all we realize. And very often Prabhupada uses the word perform. We perform devotional service. We usually think of performance as sort of acting, and that might give us the sense of doing something inauthentic. But, of course, that's not what he means. There's, I think it was Stanislavski, there's the Stanislavski method of acting. Some of you know about this.
Yes.
So the essential idea, as I understand it, is that you really enter into the character. You identify yourself as the particular character you're performing. You know, if you're playing Hamlet, then you go around saying, "To be or not to be, that is the question." So that when you perform on stage, you know, you're really convincing. So, in that sense, performing, identifying with the role, the dharma of being a devotee. And through that service, knowledge through service, we are realizing the absolute truth. And we're doing it with all kinds of relative truths. We have all sorts of materials and arrangements, situations, engagements in relation to other persons. But I would just add that on top of all this, you know, making a big contrast, relative truth, absolute, Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur says that Lord Krishna is also the supreme relative truth. Why? Because it is He to whom all persons and all things are related. Okay. Yes.
Thank you for the lecture. You mentioned in the lecture 3 virtues that maintain the truth, and the last was receptivity, and the definition was the disposition to allow truth their full weight in our lives. So my question is, how, or actually what will help us to allow truth to have this full weight in our life?
I would say it's honesty with ourselves. Being honest. The beginning of truthfulness is being truthful with oneself. And that is recognizing our vulnerabilities. What's the word for vulnerability? Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question about this one step at a time. Every time I get a little serious about spiritual life, I see how much more I have to go, and how far I am from this, from the goal. And I get impatient and even a little scared that it's so much to do.
And so little time.
Exactly. So how to really take this one step at a time and do it properly and be present on every.
I would say recognize that every little step you take is, in a sense, complete in itself, perfect in itself. It's a perfect little step. Urijan Prabhu has written this wonderful book on japa, in which he makes this point. He gives how many different 5 keys, 9 keys, I think it is. And one of them is chant one mantra at a time. So one mantra of Hare Krishna mantra is complete in itself. And similarly, every little service we do is complete in itself. And Krishna recognizes that service. Krishna is Kritagnya, one of his 64 qualities. He is grateful. He remembers the service. For eternity. Imagine that. So, take heart in that. Every little step is complete in itself. And part of its completeness is that it leads to the next step.
Another way of looking at it is, we have no choice but to take one step at a time. But the question is, whether we're going forward or backwards.
Yes. Yes, we can only take one step at a time. The question is whether we're going forward or backwards. In certain sorts of dance, steps backwards are very nice. You know, it can be very graceful, but a step back, and then 2 steps forward, and then a step back.
The Krishna Prabhupada says, everyone is dancing with Krishna.
Yes.
Those who are following Krishna's directions, they're dancing the rasa dance. And those who are dancing, trying to imitate Krishna, they're dancing with Maya.
Ekale Ishvara Krishna Arashabha Vritya Jare Jache Nachai Setaiche Kare Nritya. Krishna is Ekale Ishvara, and everyone is dancing according to his step. Step by step. One step at a time. Yes. One question at a time.
Hare Krishna. Please permit me to make a comment on this.
Please.
Yes. I think we all at times see the journey ahead of us as something almost discouraging, because it seems to be so long, taking into account where we are at present and where we want to go in the future. I must say, on a personal note, I was sometimes even discouraged in my own Krishna conscious progress, because when one honestly sees where one is and compares this to dancing with Krishna, or with these high aspirations, it's really like George Harrison says, I really want to see you, but it takes so long. And I really want to see you, and I really want to be with you, it takes so long. So I could empathize with this, and really it gave me grief, at times even doubts in our process, because on a collective level the Hare Krishna movement is moving, and it seems it will move a long time before it comes to, overcoming quarrels, for instance, of the very basic things of which we have to learn, to all this, So grief and sadness and so on. And I have really good news now. I really think this one step at a time, or move gradually, it's really a gradual process. If we apply it to the main, the yoga dharma of Inkari Yoga, that is chanting the Lord's holy name, then it means, really, Gurijan Prabhu says, one mantra at a time. I have even said one name at a time. I'm giving japa retreats and say, okay, one mantra at a time is a big advancement for most of us to be there. But let's start with the first hṛdy, and to be there at work. And I'm really convinced, both by the Shastras as well as by a little dawning of an experience that on our own we can't do, but Krishna in the form of the holy name can certainly take us. I certainly, it is without any question.
Thank you. You have completed this answer that I was giving. I think on that very definite and clear and positive note we could end. Thank you all so much for your kind participation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Gora Premanandi.
His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami